Hello, and welcome to the final episode of the 2021 season of Direct Approach with Wayne Moorehead, an exclusive podcast by Direct Selling News designed to provide direct selling corporate executives timely insights and relevant takeaways to help grow and evolve your businesses. We have a really fun and fascinating interview for you today. Host Wayne Moorehead is joined by Jason Dorsey, president of the Center for Generational Kinetics. In 2011, Jason Dorsey and his wife Denise founded the company that has since become the leader in generational research and solutions. With an emphasis on Millennials and Gen Z, the center is the go-to resource for businesses who are looking to crack the code about the mindset, worldview, and behavior of generations from baby boomers to Gen Z. The center's research on generations provides powerful and predictive clues that help people and businesses successfully connect, build trust, and drive influence. As president of the center, Jason is a pioneering leader in generational research and strategy. He has become a sought-after speaker, headlining events around the world and appearing on more than 200 television shows, including 60 Minutes, 2020, The Today Show, and on networks including CNN and CNBC. He has been featured in the New York Times and Adweek for his fresh and insightful take on how companies can solve tough generational challenges in critical business areas, including sales and marketing, recruiting, and innovation. Jason was also a Direct Selling University audience favorite earlier this year, and we're excited to announce he will be joining us as a keynote speaker this coming April for the 2022 DSU Spring event. Today, Jason and Wayne will dive into some of the insights from Jason's recent research from his new book, Zconomy: How Gen Z Will Change the Future of Business and What to Do About It. They take a close look at the differences between generations and how that affects them not only as customers of the direct selling industry, but as distributors. Jason also offers insight into how the industry, in general, missed the boat when it came to attracting millennials early on, and why it's crucial to avoid a repeat with this once-in-a-generation moment with Gen Z. Jason also shares what companies can do now to begin creating room for the next generations to drive growth. And we'll also hear Jason's thoughts on how to future-proof your business by making sure you're a welcoming Gen Z, but also providing a superior experience for Gen X, Millennials, and Baby Boomers. This episode is a must-hear, regardless of what generation you belong to. But before we dive into this fascinating interview, we invite you to join the new DSN VIP community. The VIP community helps you to be one of the most knowledgeable executives in the room by keeping up with what's happening in the channel in real time through the convenience of text. Simply text the word JOIN to 214-239-3043 and follow the prompts to add DSN as a contact in your phone. There's no separate app to download. It literally shows up in your phone's text messages. And the best part is that you get to choose what type of news and stories you want to receive, and then DSN will create a custom news feed just for you. Never miss out on what's happening in the channel again. Text us at 214-239-3043 and join the DSN VIP community today. Now, a word from our sponsor.
The solution is in your hand. Now Technologies makes building and managing your direct sales business easier than ever, all from an app on your phone. Through one comprehensive yet simple-to-use platform, your field is empowered with the simplicity of an app and the power of productivity. Your phone is truly your office, and with Now Tech, the key to growing your direct sales business is in the palm of your hand. To experience the power of Now, reach out to info@now-tech.com.
Welcome back. As we wrap up 2021 and look toward a new year, we're excited about the opportunities that lie ahead, not just for the channel and for your companies, but for the individual distributors and executives like you who are leading the way forward every day. Stay tuned for a new year of episodes in 2022 featuring some of the industry's brightest minds, providing more insight into strategy, innovation, momentum, resilience, and so much more. And now, please help me welcome your host, Wayne Moorehead, and today's guest, president of the Center for Generational Kinetics, author, speaker, and researcher, Jason Dorsey.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DSN's Direct Approach podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Moorehead, and I am super excited to be joined today by one of the brightest minds out there. He is a leading expert and researcher in generational and social dynamics. He's a keynote speaker, a strategic advisor, a founder, and many other commas need to go in there. The one and only Jason Dorsey. Jason, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much, Wayne, for having me. Yes, lots of commas there. What a fun intro. Thank you for that. I'm thrilled and honored to be on your show. Big fan and love the great messages that you're spreading. So thank you so much for having me on today.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I've loved, all of your media appearances and all the stage time that I've seen. I've learned so much from your insights and from your work. So thank you for doing what you do and helping to make all of us better.
Yeah, well, we're all in it together. And you said I could sit down in a chair instead of have to stand up for the next 30 minutes. We're winning already. Get ready, everybody. He's sitting down. Oh, my.
Casual conversations. That's what we love here. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump right in. So most of our listeners are obviously very familiar with you. Again, you're on the media all the time. Most of us have caught some of your speeches at different industry events. But do you mind taking a couple minutes and telling us a little bit about yourself and your connection in kind of your early life into direct selling?
Yeah, sure. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 18 years old is when I wrote my first book. I was very successful with it. I ended up essentially disowned by my parents and sleeping on a floor, $50,000 in debt when I turned 19 years old. But I had this mission, this vision, really this idea that I wanted to help my generation. And so the book that I wrote was called Graduate to Your Perfect Job. And the idea there was I wanted to help people understand, particularly my generation, how to overcome excuses, be able to find mentors, really learn the skills that will help them to sort of get where they're trying to go that often weren't taught in school. These are the things that people have to go out and too often learn the hard way, as I know you know. So I started with that book, and then about 2 years later, I ended up on the Today Show. The book became this big bestseller, was on all these television shows talking about what today are called millennials. And the idea was just, I want to be out there and show people what was possible. Didn't matter where you came from, didn't matter what anybody told you, like you could go out there and make it happen. And so I did that for years. And then about 13 years ago, I was on 60 Minutes. It was a big show. It was one of the highest rated that season, and it was on millennials. And they were talking about how, these millennials, their pants are falling off, all this sort of jazz, all the typical millennial stuff. So I'm on there as Morley Safer was interviewing me, and the episode was just really highly rated. They kept showing it over and over again. But after that show, all these companies called, tons of big name companies, you would know them. And they called and they said, we've hired your people. We're having all these problems. They're terrible. Their mom shows up if they don't get a promotion. They want a promotion within 2 weeks, like all that sort of stuff. Can you help us? And I didn't know any better, Wayne. This was just me. I'd been out there spoken to 500,000 young people. I wanted to help people overcome excuses. That was my mission. That's all I wanted to do. And then I was in this unexpected situation where I'm speaking to corporate executives, all kinds of industries, and they're telling me all about millennials and their generational challenges. And then one day, sort of the defining moment, and the point of the story I'm sharing is I'm in this boardroom. We were outside of DC, big public company, and the CEO is talking to the board about just how much they're struggling with millennials, and really in a negative way, right? And I'm used to it by that point, but it was just, on and on, like we were this big meme generation. So finally, I didn't know any better, because that's usually the case how I learn things. And so I said, well, can I see your data? I'd love to sort of understand what's going on with these different generations in your workforce, and maybe I can come up with some ideas, right? So they sent me the data the next week, and I'll never forget it. I'm at home, I live in Austin, Texas, and I'm at our dining room table, and I'm going through the data on my laptop, and the data doesn't match what the CEO had just said. And I didn't realize what a big deal that was, but you don't say things like that in front of your board, right? I serve on lots of boards now, but back then I did. I couldn't understand that. So my wife was there. My wife is a PhD. She's dramatically smarter than I am. And I said, Denise, this is the strangest thing. I'm in this boardroom. The CEO says all these things that are negative about millennials. They send me the data, and the data doesn't match what the CEO just said. What do you think I should do? Like, what should we do? And she says, well, we should start a research firm, because if the CEO of the big company doesn't understand their own data, imagine if we gave them great data that they could actually use that delivered measurable results. And that's exactly how we founded our research firm 13 years ago. It's called the Center for Generational Kinetics. And the idea was we wanted to separate myth from truth about generations, not just Gen Z or millennials, but all generations, because so much of what is said about them is not true, and it ends up dividing us, right? It creates this space, almost a sense of mistrust, when really there's a massive opportunity and we need every generation. So we just went into it not trying to prove or disprove anything, we just wanted to find truth and share it with leaders. And that's how it started. But what happened is, once we started doing more and more studies, we kept getting more and more media because everybody wanted to talk about it. And I've been on 200 television shows now. It's been just wild, right? And out of that, companies would call us and say, hey, can you lead a study for us? Can you solve this problem? And particularly in direct selling, because direct selling is a really interesting business. You know, you have some of these legacy businesses that have been in the space a long time, and they're navigating all kinds of generational turnover now. You've got newer businesses in the space that often may be led by millennials, right? A whole new group coming in with a whole different way to engage and communicate and build trust and train people and so forth. And then at the same time, they're serving 3, 4, even 5 different generations of customers. So you've got multiple generations of distributors led by multiple people on the executive side serving multiple generations of customers. It's a really unique time, and as you know dramatically better than me, it's very different than a traditional work environment. I mean, it's direct selling. And so what happened is we started doing work in the space, and I started speaking at DSA and for all these direct selling companies, helping people to understand that we can drive massive growth across generations, but we got to step back and get through the nonsense. You know, not all millennials are lazy. It turns out there's more millennials working than every other generation, right? Not all boomers don't know technology. Turns out they invented the technology that we use. You know, Gen X is really important and nobody ever talks about them, right? And so you just start to help people reframe and think about this. And every time we added a new client, we got more data, which was the secret. And every time we did a study, we got more data. And so now we've had over 700 clients around the world, and we've led more than 70 primary studies ourselves at CGK to separate not just myth from truth, but then what it became is, what actions should you take as a leader that actually work? And where that is relevant for direct selling, it's how to be able to communicate with, build trust, drive influence across multiple generations, not just traditional sales and marketing, but really being able to connect and lead across these generations, which, as you know, is incredibly important, more important now than ever before. And so as the organization, as our company grew and we put out new books, Zconomy being the latest bestseller we put out, we really wanted to humanize generations, show people that we can make this work, and then give them specific tools and actions that they could use. And I mean, we had no business plan for this, just to be candid, right? I mean, that was never the idea. We just wanted to solve these generational challenges. And then how it originally connected with direct selling was back in the late 90s. I got introduced to direct selling. I'll never forget it. I was at a Barnes & Noble bookstore, ironically, the same bookstore where I had my first book signing. And someone came up to me and introduced me to direct selling and really opened my eyes to it. And it was interesting because ironically, what I learned through that experience was it helped to give me the courage to become an entrepreneur, the idea that I need to constantly keep learning, the idea that we can connect, self-reliance, I mean, all kinds of fascinating things I learned from that. And I stayed in it for a while. I'm obviously not in it now because I work across all of them. But the idea that was so interesting is I recognized why the model works for so many people. And that, to this day, is what gets me excited. I mean, when I look at so many of the skills that I learned, so much of the mindset came from that period of time, which candidly, you know, I went to business school at the University of Texas. We were not introduced to those things, ironically enough. And this was an avenue for me to get that, and plus a sense of community and connection. So that was something that had a powerful impact on my life at a very formative time. And, you know, here we are all these years later. It's so exciting to get to share all these discoveries. And you know, even though what we do isn't specific to direct selling, it's particularly relevant for direct selling because of the moment direct selling is in, where you really do have this generation of boomers in many of these companies trying to lead multiple generations, and now Gen Z's coming in very different than any generation in direct selling before, and it's creating all kinds of challenges, and people are looking for answers, and at the same time, Gen Z's going, help me to be successful, I'm here. So it's a really great moment for this conversation. Obviously, you can tell I get fired up about it, so thank you for asking one question, and I answer it for 10 minutes.
No, I love it. Thank you so much for that background and context. Again, there's a couple things I want to circle back to and double click on in there. First, you were very young when you started this business. You saw an opportunity and need. I think there's an important lesson in just starting. I mean, you mentioned not having a business plan, but, you know, not waiting until everything's, you know, perfect and all the stars are aligned, but just jump in and start. I think there's a lot of value in that. And you've been an amazing example to people of just starting and figuring it out. And again, you know, making sure that you're providing an incredible value and digging in somewhere deep. Where a lot of people don't understand or have some confusion. And that's kind of the other thing. I can totally understand where, you know, the need, especially around kind of millennial and Gen Z where companies need a better understanding of those consumers, those distributors. And I think it's because every other generation has been painted, for the most part, from my perspective, with such broad brushes. But those generations have some really interesting contradictions and inconsistencies where they don't even identify with one another sometimes, where they look at one end of their generation and say, that's not me. Just as you said, you kind of jumped in to dispel some myths or misunderstandings. Can you talk a little bit about those inconsistencies around kind of that Gen Z?
Yeah, so I think it probably would be helpful for me to share how we define generations. So just to sort of make sure that people understand our point of view. So our research firm is called the Center for Generational Kinetics, and this is all we do is study generations. And we don't just study Gen Z and millennials, even though you and I are both passionate about that topic. We always want to talk about all the generations. And the reason is it's a cross-generational conversation, or as I talk about all the time, it's really about future-proofing your business. And that's really important right now. So when we think about generations, the way we define generations, and don't worry for everybody listening to this, don't write this down, I'll give you a better definition. But the way we define it sort of from an academic viewpoint is a generation is a segment of a geographically linked population that experience similar social and cultural events at roughly the same time in their maturation, leading to predictability by scenario, which is a lot of fancy words from the PhDs who work for me that basically says it's a group of people born about the same time and raised in about the same place. And I think the most important insight that I share with leaders is that generations are not a box. And this is super important. I know you and I have talked about this before, and we completely get it, but a lot of people don't, they're like, oh, I was born in this year, so you're that. It doesn't work that way. But what generations are, and we prove it through math, and we prove it through our research every day, is generations are incredibly powerful and predictive clues to do three things. And the key is, and specifically in direct selling, these clues matter tremendously because a clue is basically a head start. It's not putting people in a box. It's just a head start to understand, to better create empathy, see the world through their view, and drive these outcomes. And what understanding generations does is it allows us to better connect with, build trust, and drive influence. And at the end of the day, direct selling is one of the only industries that's completely reliant upon that, even with distributors, right? These are not employees. These are distributors. These are people out there choosing to wake up and go do this every day. So the ability to connect, build trust, and drive influence is incredibly important. So the key thing as we go into Gen Z is just to keep in mind, for everybody listening, these are clues, not a box. They're clues based on trends that shape them, things like parenting and technology and so much more. And the better we understand and research them, the better we can understand and connect across them. The one other piece, given your global reach of your audience, that I think is not talked about enough, is that the role of geography plays. And you will see differences within the same generation around the world. So in the US, we'll see differences, for example, between urban and rural. And then as I speak all around the world, because I speak a lot of direct selling events outside the US, we got to make sure that whenever we're talking about generations, it fits whatever that geography is. And we do a lot of work to make sure that that's just spot on where they are. So going back to Gen Z, to your point, and millennials, one of the things I hear a lot is they say, oh, well, Gen Z, they're just a more extreme version of millennials. They're like millennials 2.0. And I'm like, wrong, right? And what we find, so just as you talked about the nuance and so forth, when we think about millennials are older than most people assume. The oldest millennials are well into their early 40s. I just did an interview on middle-aged millennials, right? So this group that people think is eternally 25 has been eternally 25 for over 15 years now. And so now they're really going into a new life stage. They're starting families. There's all kinds of interesting things going on with millennials that we have to sort of reframe that whole conversation. The reason it's relevant to Gen Z that's so fascinating is that the oldest members of Gen Z, because I know somebody's thinking, well, why do we want to talk about teenagers? That's not what we're talking about here. The oldest members of Gen Z are already 25 years old. They're the fastest growing generation of adults in the workforce, whether that's working in direct selling, and me, I have a lot of direct selling company data. Gen Z is massive for people to understand. And Gen Z is very different than millennials. What our research shows is they're much more frugal with their money. Why is that? Well, they came of age around the Great Recession, which really impacted them. They weren't old enough to work, but they were old enough to understand what was going on, feel the anxiety, hear their parents talk about losing jobs, people losing houses. I mean, it was a really tough time. And they were old enough to understand it, but young enough for it to still change from their perspective on the world. And that's a really key life stage thing that normally I spend a lot of time talking about. But the key here is Gen Z came of age with that Great Recession. Their parents were also Gen X primarily. primarily, who are super skeptical anyways. And then what happened? They finally hit adulthood. What they've crashed into now? The pandemic. So you put it all together, and what do you see? Gen Z is driving double-digit growth at thrift stores. Their savings is through the roof, which is really wild. They have emergency accounts, and they're like 17 years old with an emergency account. What 17-year-old had an emergency account? And they're like, oh yeah, I've got extra money on my Cash App or Venmo or whatever it is that they're using. So fascinating. And at the same time, Gen Z wants to be more entrepreneurial. But what's interesting is in our research, we lead lots of studies on Gen Z. We do, as you know, our annual State of Gen Z study every year, and then our new Zconomy book that just came out. What we find with Gen Z is that as you look ahead with them, is Gen Z right now is interested in starting their own business, but this is the secret, and this is so fascinating for direct selling. They want to start it while they're doing something else. See, there was this other perspective that, oh, if you're going to do something, you got to jump in with both feet, and that's how you really become an entrepreneur. That's how you do. This generation is really risk averse, or as I would say, they're just smarter about it. They're like, hey, I'm going to do something else, and I'm going to do this until this other thing really takes off, and then I'll do just that. But it's a fascinating approach, and the easier it is for them to get into it, the easier it is for them to feel some traction, like they're actually moving forward, making some progress, developing those skills, all that sort of stuff. That's really powerful for creating the momentum to get them to do it. They're also the number one group to refer their friends to want to be a part of an opportunity like this if we position it the right way, which means not talking about the word referral, by the way. And so we see that Gen Z, they're looking for extra sources of income. They want to own their own business, but they want to do it in a lower risk way, which is really fascinating. They're all about connection with people. It just looks different than older generations. Like, I can't tell you how many times I hear a boomer or Gen Xer say, oh, Gen Z, they're terrible at communicating. They don't even look you in the eyes. I'm like, really? Because in the time it took you to say that, they sent 10,000 text messages. They just communicate differently. It's not right or wrong. Everybody wants to judge it. We're not judging here. We're just saying it's different. If you know that, there's incredible power within that. So when we look at them, they're coming of age. They're looking for these opportunities at the same time, which is really wild. They want to be able to save for retirement. They want to hit financial goals. I mean, who are they? They're 22 years old, and they're asking people about, well, how's this going to help me reach my retirement? Really fascinating. You know what else they want is scheduling flexibility, which, by the way, is almost impossible for them to find in so many jobs right now because we're so understaffed. I mean, you start to look at Gen Z and it becomes very exciting. This generation, besides their diversity and their energy and their relationship with technology, just from a value standpoint, what they bring is really, really timely. And it's just understanding that and not looking at them as kids or young people. Like, don't put them in that box. This is a whole new generation. In fact, they think millennials are old. And by the way, if you want to annoy a Gen Zer, call them a millennial. They will tell you, oh no, I am not a millennial. So it's just a really exciting time for the work that we do. Without sounding sort of, trivial about it, it really is a once in a generation moment because there's only one period of time where a generation really is emerging in the top end of it, which is exactly what's happening right now. A lot of direct selling companies did not successfully adapt to engage millennials until it was too late. They struggled. They said, oh, we're going to do what we've always done. They're going to eventually grow out of it. Well, what happened? They didn't. And we saw a lot of legacy names struggle, and we saw new companies rapidly emerge. What I hope will happen now is the opposite. People say, okay, Gen Z is different. There's all similarities. Look, we're all human. We all want to feel valued. We all want to feel included. We all want to feel loved. We all want to feel like we're doing something important. But the how we do many of those things is different, particularly when it comes to communication, when it comes to learning, training, events, incentives, all these sorts of things. And so being able to accurately do that and engage this next generation is a massive, massive opportunity. And I'll tell you, the direct selling companies that don't adapt, they're really going to be in trouble. Because if they thought millennials were hard to eventually adapt to and expensive and challenging and all that stuff, just wait for Gen Z. Because, it's interesting. There's zero incentive for them to adapt to how a direct selling company likes to run their business. There's zero incentive. And that to me is the opportunity and the challenge.
Yeah, and I think that's been an expectation of a lot of direct selling companies when a lot of new technology emerged, let's say even over the last, decade, it was new to a lot of people. So there was kind of this training and kind of learning together. And I think a lot of that still resides in some of our companies, kind of that culture around, well, they'll just learn to do it our way. We'll just train them how to use our back office or our e-commerce, or how to enroll or how to buy. And it seems like these new generations are not willing to put up with that. They're not willing to jump through hoops. They want ease. They want greater convenience. And it seems like as a result, a lot of direct selling companies have been one step behind from a technology standpoint. So we go to all events within the industry, and there's discussion of, we're doing this digital transformation within our company. We're transforming our technology, and there are kind of these half steps or stutters. What do direct selling companies need to do to really take that great leap forward from a technology standpoint and put themselves in a position where they can really appeal to and attract these millennials and Gen Z?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks for your candor about where I think a lot in the industry are. And look, I'm a super fan of creating opportunity for people, right? Whatever that opportunity looks like for them and they get fired up about, like, let's go do it. When it comes to technology, though, what we see is that it's, you said they're sort of not willing to deal with it, not willing to put up with it. You're right. And the reason is they don't have to. And I think that's important. I can't tell you, when I speak internally for direct selling companies about generational strategy and understanding how to do this, it's a very different conversation than when I speak at these big, direct selling rallies where you're in an arena or, these sorts of things, right? Because on the inside, what I have to tell them is, look, y'all are standing up there saying, oh, we're mobile first. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that in the last 18 months. We're mobile first. Well, that's not good enough. You have to be mobile only. And it always shakes them up, and some people don't like to hear it, but I mean, that's just the way things are with the truth. But the reality is, if I have to leave a mobile device to go complete anything, any of the thing that you just listed, right? Enroll somebody, run an e-commerce store, process anything. Like, if I have to leave my phone to go do that, you just lost a huge number of people. So mobile first isn't good enough. In fact, I would argue it's one of those starting points that sets you up for failure, because it automatically implies people are going to be willing to move. And it's just not true. So we've got to go from mobile first to mobile only. I think that's incredibly important. The second thing that we've got to really drive, and look, direct selling companies can do this, and many of them are trying and they're on that path. So we're all got to work on it in the way that we can work on it, but much deeper personalization. The idea that sort of one size fits all doesn't work with younger generations, and frankly, older generations don't like it that much either. And so the more that we can create deeper personalization and whatever that is that they're getting from the company or engaging, particularly in training, which is a really big deal. The fact that, we've got to go to a big rally to learn, that just obviously doesn't work during a time of COVID, but it should be much more on demand than that. In fact, it should be predictive. It should know when I need these things. It should help me to develop. It should be pulling me along. I shouldn't have to force feed it, right? And we know that there's tons of training you can do that's specifically like that directly to a mobile device. What else do we know? I mean, really getting in the weeds, I think it'll be interesting to see how comp plans ultimately evolve and incentives. Younger generations expect to be able to earn things faster because everybody else allows them to earn things faster. That doesn't mean they're going to earn the same things, but they need to feel like they're moving forward. You'll see this with a lot of hotel programs and frequent flyer programs. They've changed when they start to give rewards because it turns out people are like, I don't want to wait that long. And Gen Z and millennials like, that's not loyalty. Loyalty is I've been here twice. Like, where's my thing? And so, which isn't bad. Like, we got to stop. It's hard. Like, we're all humans. We want to be like, oh no, like we know what's best or whatever. And we can't do that with Gen Z. I mean, the whole idea here is if we don't adapt to them, someone else will. Full stop. And that, to me, is really the key insight with technology. So we need things that are obviously going to be, much more personalized, directly to mobile all the time, allow us to continuously learning, allow us to have better dashboards to track everything much closer to real time, to know where we are, and so forth, to engage, also to create a better sense of community, whatever's allowed through compliance. Like, all those things should be simple. And when I speak to execs on the strategy side, the term I teach them is, older generations in particular love to make things complex because complexity, we can solve for every one of these, edge cases. But what it comes down to with younger generations is one phrase. And the phrase is, and it's really a question, how simple can you make it so it just works?
Yeah.
That's it. They don't care how, they don't care why, they don't care when. They just expect it to work with the fewest number of buttons or clicks possible. So moving actually towards simplicity rather than complexity is a big deal in a situation like this. And so as you start to put all that together, you go, okay, so you can start to see this is the persona or personas that we're trying to make sure that we have really adapted for. And by the way, what's really interesting, and I talk about this a lot in the Zconomy book, is for the first time ever, technology trends are being driven from the youngest generation, Gen Z, up to the oldest. That's never happened before. Remember, tech trends used to be driven by those who were older and more affluent. They were the first ones who could buy the microwave, right? Or the VHS or the Walkman or whatever it was, even that TI calculator, and then eventually got cheaper and younger people were able to get it. But now it's happened because of mobile devices, particularly inexpensive mobile devices. All of a sudden, you got all these people on there, and now they're driving those tech adoption trends up to the oldest. Everything from banking and communications and how to send money and entertainment, learning, and so much more. And so the way I like to think about it and talk with executives about on the strategy side is if you really want to future-proof your business, you've got to understand Gen Z now. Otherwise, you won't just miss Gen Z. You could end up losing everybody else, which, by the way, there's a number of brands that have gone through that story. So I think the challenge, and this is sort of the key when I talk with direct selling executives, is you want to make sure that we're embracing Gen Z and millennials without losing Gen X and boomers. Because the message you don't want to telegraph is, oh, Gen X and boomers are over, we want millennials and Gen Z, because that's not the message. The message is what worked with boomers and Gen X may not work with millennials and Gen Z. So if you want these younger generations, there are some things we can do differently that still honor, celebrate, respect, and embrace boomers and Gen X. We're just creating room for the next generations to drive growth. And it's such an important message. That's why people say, oh, Jason, come talk to us about Gen Z. I'm like, well, I'll talk about Gen Z as long as we can talk about the other generations too. Because it's really about what we call, at CGK, we call it generational context. And that's really where the value of this is helping to look across these generations and sort of put it together in a way that you go, oh, okay, I understand that. I can, do that. And the other thing I think is really important concept, Wayne, that I just want to make sure we mention. This is not about catering or coddling. This is not about everybody needs a trophy and they should get an award for showing up and a ribbon and whatever else. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're saying is whoever adapts wins, and somebody will. And my view is might as well be you. So if that's the case and you really want to grow and you really want to future-proof your business and you really want to drive these outcomes, then these are the things you need to know and find the right steps that you can take. And when you do that, what you find is other generations like it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that actually is kind of at times a defining characteristic of direct selling is we have a tendency to kind of overserve the current field leadership, which then we inadvertently kind of underserve that next up and coming generation. And if we don't adapt, if we don't evolve around technology, personalization, communication, we're not going to have that group there to be the future leaders anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I do think it is important to try to, remain relevant to the existing, but really focus on appealing and adapting to bring in kind of that new generation, or I think we will lose in the next 3 or 5 years.
Yeah, and I know it's a taboo topic, but you and I don't mind talking about those.
Sure.
There are people in direct selling that have built businesses up, whether it's their downline or however you want to describe it, that are able to coast, and they have been coasting for some period of time. And now we're saying, hey, you've got to do some things differently if you want to continue to grow. And look, that's threatening. And sometimes it's disheartening. It's frustrating. It's a whole lot of stuff. Plus, they're successful. They've built these great organizations. And as I always like to say to them, the principles you built them on still work. Mm-hmm. They still work. They're the same ones. But the how, sort of what we're wrapping it in order to be effective now is what's different. And if you know that, you could take what you do so incredibly well and then just apply it in a slightly different way and have this amazing outcome. That's it.
I do think it's about evolution, not revolution. We're not saying absolutely go out and be somebody different tomorrow, but take the steps to appeal to these new generations, because I do think they're different. They change faster. They're a little more identifiable than generations in the past. They're more unique. And if we don't get our arms around it, I think all of us could be, we could be having a pretty challenging time the next 3 to 5 years. So another dynamic I'd love for you to touch on that we're hearing a lot about in the news today is the Great Resignation. Looking back even to September, I just recently read the numbers. About 4.4 million people quit their jobs in that month alone. So pretty incredible. If you start kind of expanding that through the rest of the year and into Q1, can you shed a little bit of light on what's going on here and what can we do from direct selling to kind of attract some of those people, into these additional sources of incomes or kind of side gigs?
Yeah. So, the way I think about it, we've done a lot of work studying this because it's obviously very key to our traditional company clients. The way we look at it here is I think the Great Resignation, which is sort of the media has really glommed onto because it's a catchy title, it's really not so much a Great Resignation as much as we define it as a great realignment. You just had people go through a generation-defining experience, truly a traumatic. This has been awful. It has been hard, and we can all sugarcoat over it. This has been an incredibly difficult time. Incredibly difficult. And it's, by the way, during this period of the pandemic, our research has shown that each generation is having a different experience. People act like we're not. We're having very different experiences. We're having different experiences by gender, which we don't talk about. We're also having different experiences by geography and a whole bunch more. So the reason we call it the Great Realignment is that this period of time has brought clarity to a lot of people of what their values are. And they've seen that, whether that's, having to be home with their kids, whether that's not being able to go to work for some period of time, whether that's losing their job, losing a family member. I mean, there's all kinds of things we could speak to. So there's been this real values clarification, I think, for a lot of people, and that's certainly what our data shows. And now they're saying, is the job I'm in the one that I want to be in? Now, interestingly, it's not necessarily that they're saying, I don't want to be in a job, which is, I think, how a lot of people are reading it. You're going to see a lot of people go back to work. It's going to happen over time. They're switching jobs. They're doing different things like that. What they're doing is they're quitting the jobs that they feel are not the right fit for them. And we can point to lots of different reasons. Sometimes it's boss, sometimes it's manager, sometimes it's hours, sometimes it's work environment, could be COVID risk, could be commute. Like, we come up with a whole bunch of stuff. At the same time, we've not seen increases in salary or wage offers like we've seen right now. Not, I don't know about how long it's been, but I can tell you it's been a really long time based on our data. And all of a sudden, you're seeing people leave these jobs and getting offered a lot more money. So they're leaving one to go to another. Now, workforce participation is still lower than we'd like it to be, significantly lower, and we're waiting to see if those people come back and when they do. But the key is, if we frame it as a great realignment, then it helps us to understand what's going to actually get those people into their next organization. So when we think about direct selling, what does that mean? When we ask people, why are they leaving these jobs? Where are they leaving? Oh, I don't like the work hours. I don't feel like I'm in control of the work I do. You're telling me I got to go back into an office. I don't want to go back into the office. I'm now interested in owning my own business. You've seen all the stories about that. So if you look at what a lot of people say they're leaving in order to go do more of, it actually fits direct selling really well. I mean, direct selling is a phenomenal side gig for lots and lots of people, an ability to sort of be their own boss, create their own business, engage and connect with people, meet new people, find something that they're really passionate about that they've always wanted to do and get to go pursue, whether that's health and wellness or, pick any of these things. So there's a lot there that I think is really exciting for direct selling. The key is we can't be sort of opportunistic about it, like, oh, well, if you quit your job, this is what you should do, right? That sounds pretty awful. But instead, it's like, if you're looking for these things, we can help you to build that right now, whether that's on the side, whether that's full time, whether it's for a period of time as you figure things out, because you might just try it for 90 days and find out that you absolutely love it. And this is what you want to do no matter what you go to do in the future. So I do think it's a massive opportunity for the industry if they approach it the right way, if, in messaging communications, and think about it through this sort of values clarification piece rather than some of these other things. The idea that, hey, you can leave and just go make a lot of money, which is what, sometimes I hear. What we find with younger generations, that's not necessarily what they want. The ability to have more freedom, be more creative, be your own boss, have something on the side, be able to travel while you do. There's a million other things that may get them more excited. And so we want to be, again, careful that what works for us in our generation, or for you and I individually, may not be the things that somebody else is looking for. And that's one of those opportunities for us to really grow and be able to choose to adapt. So I think this is a really exciting moment in general. I'm excited for all the people going, hey, I'm going to take some time to figure out what I really want to do. That's pretty awesome. And the key is, as they go through that journey, is to be there to say, hey, we've got something really exciting that may be a fit for you. It's worth taking the time to explore and learn more about. And so that, to me, is the way I think about it. Not a great resignation, but sort of reframing it as this great realignment or this values clarification, and then seeing, do we fit those for them? And if we do, what a great opportunity.
Jason, I love that. I'm going to start wrapping up right now. Again, that was almost so perfect that I kind of want to end on that. I think that all of your work and research is really at the heart of all the changes that we're seeing here in direct selling. And I understand that as we kind of dig deeper on these generational dynamics, we're going to position our companies and the channel as a whole to really be better positioned for success going forward. Where can people go to find you, to connect with you and learn more about you?
Yeah, well, I'd love to connect with all of your listeners and fans and people like me who learn from you. You can visit me on the website. It's easiest, jasondorsey.com, jasondorsey.com. And you can download our State of Gen Z research there for free, no cost. You can just download it, read some of the new research. It's super interesting about money and jobs and how people think about the government and their future. It's super cool stuff. Also, you can follow me on social media. LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram are the three that I use the most. So feel free to reach out there, and love for you to pick up a copy of the new Zconomy book. It has all of our best research and strategies, how to, tons of great stories. It was a top 10 business book from Forbes, which we're really honored about. So please feel free to check that out. And I definitely look forward to hearing from everybody.
Thank you so much, Jason. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you, Wayne. Thanks for what you do. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in. To learn more about Jason's research and insights, visit jasondorsey.com and check out his new book, Zconomy: How Gen Z Will Change the Future of Business and what to do about it. And save the date now for April 20th through 21st, 2022 to attend the Spring DSU event, where Jason will be a keynote speaker. Since 2004, DSN has proudly served the direct selling industry and the executives that lead it. Our mission is to serve, educate, and edify the channel as your go-to daily resource for breaking global news, emerging trends, and powerful stories so you can stay informed, engaged, and always one step ahead as it relates to the business of direct selling. We invite you to subscribe to the podcast to be the first to know when new episodes are available. Visit us online at directsellingnews.com and text us at 214-239-3043 to join the new DSN VIP community.